The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, Mr. King, Ms. Brady, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Spengler, and Ms. Higgs. And the prosecution is represented by Mr. Brockler, Ms. Pearson, Mr. Orman, Mr. Edson, and Ms. Tish McGuire. The record should reflect that we are outside the presence of the jury at this time. Juror number 983 has indicated that he would like to speak with me. So we're going to bring him in first, and then we'll proceed from there. So could you please get juror number 983? The record should reflect that juror number 983 is now present in the courtroom. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I was told that you wanted to chat with me.
Yes, sir.
What's on your mind?
My job today turned in my juror number for payroll, and I just wanted to bring a concern up that it was supposed to be anonymous, but they told me they had to turn in my juror number for my payroll to continue.
Oh, okay. And so who did they turn that into?
To the payroll department at RTD.
At work?
Yes.
Okay. And so did they do that already, or?
They did that this morning.
They did that this morning? Okay. So does that mean that the payroll knows that you're on the jury? Is that what your concern is?
Yes.
Okay. Are you anticipating that they will tell anyone about that, or that they will spread that around at work?
That's one of my main concerns is right now, yes.
Okay. What can I do to assist in that regard?
I guess there really isn't much you can do. I'll just have to keep full distance from everybody at work.
Right. And you're not going to work right now, I'm assuming.
Well, the Friday that we're not here in court, basically, is when I'm having to be there.
Do you think people knew or guessed that you might be on the jury anyway, because you're only showing up every other Friday or so?
I'm pretty sure they probably are already, yes.
Okay, so people probably already suspected that you were on the jury anyway, I'm assuming, right?
That's what I'm kind of guessing too.
All right. So keep doing what you've been doing in terms of not talking about the case, following all my advisements. If anyone tries to talk to you about it, then avoid talking about it. Remove yourself from that location. I don't know whether there's a way for you to tell your supervisor or the payroll department or whoever that there is an admonishment that prevents you from talking about the case or from hearing conversations about the case, and to the extent that they can ask people to avoid doing that around you, you would appreciate it. Is that feasible at your job?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Remind me, without going into the company you work for, generally what you do?
Mechanic.
Mechanic? Okay. So is that something that's feasible? You know, just having whoever is in charge say, hey, listen, you know, I'm on the jury. I'm assuming your supervisor knows.
Yes, they do.
And the people in charge know. And so how about asking them, people may start finding out or may already suspect that I'm on the jury, and I can't talk about the case. I can't hear anything about the case. And so to the extent that you can assist by getting co-workers to avoid talking about the case at all, especially in your presence, you would appreciate that. Do you think that would help?
I will definitely bring that up this Friday when I'm there.
Okay, great. Great. And again, you know, just be vigilant so that as soon as you hear anyone talking, just walk away, go away, and then maybe at a later point you can say, hey guys, you know, please avoid talking about the case in my presence. I can't, you know, that's one of the rules that the judge has put in place. I can't hear anything about the case. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Great. All right, anything else?
That was it. That was my only concern.
All right, thank you for bringing this up to my attention. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, the record should reflect that the juror has now stepped out of the courtroom. That's juror 983. Is there any additional record or any other questions that the people want me to ask?
No, Your Honor.
Any additional record that you want me to make or any additional questions that you want me to ask, Ms. Spengler or anyone on behalf of the defense? No, Your Honor. No? Mr. King, thank you. All right. Is there anything we need to discuss before I bring the jury in? On behalf of the people, Ms. Pearson?
No, Your Honor.
On behalf of the defense, Ms. Spengler?
No.
All right, just, yeah.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Edson?
I had one quick thing. It may already be out here, but I would request People's Exhibit 899 for the first witness.
899. We can do that. Thank you. Just a quick word about the last witness yesterday, Mr. Rotman, who testified. I think it's R-O-T-T-M-A-N. Please make sure that you advise your witnesses with respect to order number C-200, which I issued last week. So I don't want to hear anything about people being placed on gurneys once they get to the hospital. I don't want to hear about how long they had to wait before they were treated. For the most part, the testimony was within the parameters that I have set out, but there were a couple of objections that I sustained, and then there were a couple of other things that I'm not sure were objected to. But please advise your witnesses. And in terms of physical therapy, if you think that that's something you're going to go into, bring that up with me beforehand outside the presence of the jury, because in general, I have not allowed any physical therapy or post-operative type of procedures. I have said that if it's something that goes to the permanency of the injury, that I may allow it if it goes to the result of the injury, because I think that is relevant to the nature and character and extent of the injury. But in general, I'm not allowing that type of evidence either. So, okay. With that, let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. Good morning, folks. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. Good. Good to have you back. Mr. Edson, you may call your next witness.
People call Dylan DeAngelis.
Good morning. Come on up. If I could have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I solemnly swear.
Okay, please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Dylan Thomas Benulis, and it's Dylan Thomas Thomas. Last name Benulis Bieniulis.
Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
Sir, what do you currently do for a living?
Right now, I am a project management assistant at an analytical testing laboratory in Arvada. Excuse me, in Arvada.
I'm going to refer you to July 14th of 2012. How are you employed back on that date?
Sales associate at the Science Company in Denver.
What is the Science Company?
Science Company is a store that sells scientific equipment such as lab work, glassware, chemicals, microscopes, and telescopes, things of that nature.
Where roughly is the Science Company store located?
It's right at the corner of First and Lincoln in Denver.
Up to the point of July 14th, 2012, how long had you been an employee there?
Since October of 2010, so, just about a year and a half at that point.
And when did you leave the Science Company to go to your current position?
Just recently, just at the about the 24th of April, so about three weeks ago.
Back on or around July 14th, 2012, what was your job title and your duties at the Science Company?
Sales associate, and basically kind of assist customers in store over the phone, fill orders. We were also, the company is also on the web, so I would fill orders, chemical repacking, data entry, invoice entry, things like that.
The physical store location in Denver that you're referring to, are there a lot of employees associated with that store?
It's a small business, eight people. Yeah.
And back during July of 2012, you were one of those roughly 8 people?
Yes.
Back during July of 2012, were you familiar with the records keeping system and the invoices and the customer information associated with sales for the site?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Does that include sales of any of the products there physically at the location, including chemicals, properties, things like that?
Yes.
Just in general, without getting into great detail, how does the Science Company maintain records, invoices, and such for customers?
Well, there's at the point of sale, there is a record created, and it's stored on a database on the computers in the store, so a point of sale system.
Are you familiar with that point of sale system and those types of records?
Yes.
Are you also familiar with retrieving records from prior sales, retrieving invoices from prior sales, things of that nature?
Yes.
All related to the Science Company?
Yep.
Just in general, to your knowledge, are the records and invoices kept with the Science Company in the normal and regular course of business for their customer transactions?
Yes.
Similar question, is there a way to create duplicate invoices? In other words, not the actual receipt or invoice that was given to a customer, but a duplicate of that showing the sale?
Yeah, you can definitely do that, yes.
And were you familiar, and actually still are familiar with that type of procedure with the Science Company?
Yes, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of looking up a name in the database, and then it'll show if that person has made a purchase there, and then you can select the transaction if there's more than one, and print an invoice.
To the best of your knowledge, are the record-keeping systems and the invoices created with the Science Company reliable and accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
For the record, judges, will be People's Exhibits 359 and 360. Sir, I've handed you what's been previously marked as two exhibits, People's Exhibit 359 and 360. You're familiar with those exhibits?
Yes.
Have you personally seen those exhibits before?
Yes, I have.
What are those exhibits in general?
They are duplicate invoices of a transaction made at the science company.
Is there a particular customer associated with the duplicate invoices?
Yes, these were initially purchased by James Holmes.
Is there a salesperson indicated with these invoices?
Yeah, it's right next to salesperson. You'll see two initials, DB. Those are my initials for Dylan Benulis.
And do you actually recall this particular transaction that's located within these duplicate invoices of People's Exhibit 359 and 360?
I do.
To the best of your knowledge, did the documents contained within 359 and 360 fairly and accurately indicate the transaction that took place on July 14th, 2012 at the Science Company?
Yes, they do.
Judge, I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 359 and 360.
Any objection?
No objection to those two exhibits.
Without objection, exhibits P-TR-359 and 360 are admitted and may be published.
Could I please have the first page? Actually, could I have People's Exhibit 359? Okay, sir, a couple of housekeeping things here. I have on the screen for record purposes People's Exhibit 359. What I'd like you to do is to explain to the jury what we're looking at here, and I'll ask you some questions. If you feel the need that you want to point anything out specifically, let me know. We've got a pointing stick there, and we'll have you have a handheld microphone so you can approach that.
Okay, can I have that microphone to do that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Rather than
Yes, can I approach, Your Honor?
It's right here, yeah, it's right
Yeah.
there. And then you have to turn it on.
Test. Okay.
And you can stand down if you wish.
Okay.
So let me ask you a couple questions. First thing, to the top left, can you just point out the company information, please?
Yeah, so the Science Company, 95 Lincoln Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, and then our phone number.
To the right there, invoice ID and sales order. Can you point that out for the jury, please?
Right in that location there.
Also in that area, does it show the date of the transaction?
7/14/2012.
The bill to and ship to, who is that?
That's James E. Holmes.
Now, I do have a question. The ship to also has James E. Holmes. Was this a shipping transaction or was this an in-person transaction?
No, it was in person, but my habit was to fill all both fields at the point of sale. When creating the sale, you would put the information in the bill to side, and then I was trained to copy it over to the ship to side to make it easier to search for things. But it was an in-store transaction. A shipping transaction would have an address here to be shipped to.
Understood. Can you locate for the jury the salesperson, the DB that you were referring to?
Right in that location.
Okay, and again, that's you, correct?
That is me.
Can we scroll down People's Exhibit 359 just a bit, please? Just in general, can you describe for the jury what the transaction entailed on July 14th, 2012?
What the transaction entailed?
Yeah. What was the purchase for?
The purchase was for a number of electrodes, which are basically bars of metal of different types of metal: zinc, brass, iron, aluminum. And then the quantities of each item are listed on the left, and the next column are the item IDs, which is kind of like a unique identifier to speed things up for a store rather than just going by descriptions. And then the descriptions are here, so you've got your electrodes, metal bars, a petri dish, which is a little glass dish used to grow bacteria in science class, or hold anything basically. The next two are chemicals: glycerin, potassium permanganate, and these numbers to the side are the weight of the chemicals if there's a number there. Next line down is another chemical, ammonium chloride. Next line down is magnesium ribbon. That's basically a long, thin roll of magnesium, which again is kind of like a metal, very soft, pliable metal. Motor with leads is basically a small electric DC motor for whatever projects. And then the next line down is black alligator clips, and just like they sound, just a wire with 2 clips on the ends. And then there's the mortar and pestle. That's the size, 130 millimeters, made of porcelain. And then you've got your prices, and then the amount, which would be the unit price multiplied by the quantity.
So just looking at the quantities, for example, the zinc flat electrodes, how many were purchased?
There was 10 purchased.
What about the aluminum electrodes?
5 of those.
So just so we know, is that fair to say on the far left, the quantity that tells you how many were purchased?
Yes.
Okay. If we could scroll down to the very bottom of People's Exhibit 359, what was the grand total, including tax, for this purchase?
$175.69.
What was the method of payment?
Credit card.
If we could please have People's Exhibit 360. If we could just scroll down a bit, please, on 360. Fair to say that a lot of this is similar information until we get to the bottom. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
We can go to the bottom. How is People's Exhibit 360 different than 359?
On this invoice here, you'll see that there's also a spot showing the kind of the end of the credit card number. The beginning is obviously X'd out. Merchant ID and approval code, that is probably an identifier for the company, and the transaction ID is also on there. So it's a little more kind of behind the scenes. You wouldn't normally see this unless you printed off an invoice with extra parameters. However, and then here's the signature line. And since this is a copy, the signature wouldn't be there. This was not printed on the day of the transaction. The actual one on the day of the transaction would have a signature there.
I want you to look at the card number there on the left, if you can read it. You also have the physical exhibit in front of you, if you'd rather look at that as well.
Yep, okay.
But what are the last 4 digits of that card number, please?
2217.
And that first 2 letters in front of that, what is that?
MC for MasterCard.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think you can have a seat at this point. Sir, I'm going to show you a couple of... Actually, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
Sir, I've placed before you what's been previously admitted into evidence as People's Exhibit 899. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
Is it on?
I think it's on.
Okay. Yeah, this is a bottle of glycerin from the science company.
Is that the same type and quantity as was purchased that's contained within People's Exhibits 359 and 360?
It is, yeah. It's a 16-ounce bottle of glycerin.
If I could please have People's Exhibit 2381. It's a photograph already admitted. As best we can zoom in on the white bottle in the middle of the screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
People's Exhibit 2381, directing your attention to the white bottle in the center of the screen now. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. That's a bottle of ammonium chloride with the science company label on it.
To the best of your knowledge, does that appear to be the same type of bottle of ammonium chloride that was purchased that's contained within People's Exhibits 359 and 360?
Yes.
If I could please have People's Exhibit 4221. It's a photograph already admitted as well. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, this is a picture of the aluminum metal electrodes that were on the invoice.
Looking, you have before you People's Exhibit 359 and 360. Are the items numbers the same, the NC item numbers?
Yeah, NC 5319, the first on the list there.
Could I also have People's Exhibit 4242, a photograph already admitted? Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, this is another bottle of chemical potassium permanganate in this case with the science company label on it.
Does that appear to be the same type of bottle that was purchased that's contained in People's Exhibit 359 and 360?
Yes.
What was the quantity?
That's a 500 gram bottle. It's a little tough to make out, but I'll point it out to you. Right in that corner there, it says 500 grams, which is also what's on the invoice.
Okay, thank you. Sir, do you specifically remember the transaction with James E. Holmes on July 14th, 2012?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the jury what you recall about that transaction?
Sure. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and nobody else was in the store when James Holmes came in, and he came in, looked around for about 10 minutes or so, kind of kept to himself, didn't really ask for any help from me. A lot of people will ask for help.
Overruled.
Go ahead, sir.
So a lot of people will ask for help. He did not. Kind of kept to himself, looked around at the whole store. There's a lot in there. So we looked around for about 10 minutes and picked up a few items and brought them up to the counter. And, I noticed he was getting a few more of the electrodes, the metal electrodes, than a normal person would.
Counter relevance.
Overruled.
Go ahead, sir.
And I asked if, kind of being a good sales associate, I asked if basically he grabbed all the ones that were on the shelf. So I asked, if you need more, there's probably more in the back.
Objection to hearsay and confrontation.
Overruled. It's discussed the defendant's statements. So to the extent that this witness is testifying about his own statements, they are being allowed to place the defendant's statements in context. Go ahead.
Okay. And he said that he didn't need any more. And then that was basically the end of any sort of conversation with him. He, appearance-wise, the red hair, very easy to remember that. And he paid with a credit card, put everything in a bag for him, and he left.
The setup of the science company, is this a store that any member of the public can come into and purchase items?
Yes.
The items that are contained within People's Exhibit 359 and 360 are those items that anyone can come in and purchase?
Yes.
Judge, can I have one moment, please?
Yes.
Other than what you've described, is there anything else about this transaction that stood out in your mind, any different than any other transactions?
I do recall that he was, much like many other people that come to the store, kind of looked, and kept to himself, much like, I wrote kind of a nerdy person. It's kind of a nerd's paradise, in other words, to see all this stuff in one place at one time. So I did mention that he did seem quite like many other people that would come in the store as well.
Judge, I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right. Members of the jury, I want to make sure that you understood my ruling a moment ago. To the extent that this witness spoke about his own statements outside the courtroom, those statements were allowed for the limited purpose of putting in context the defendant's statements to him. Did everybody understand that? And everybody's saying yes. That's the only purpose for which you may consider these witnesses out-of-court statements, okay? All right. Is there any cross-examination, Ms. Spengler?
No.
And it appears that the jury may have questions for you, sir, so give me a moment, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Would counsel please approach? Sir, the jury has submitted a question that I have found is appropriate under the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law. The question is, do you remember how the defendant acted while in the store? What was his demeanor?
Very, very quiet, very calm. Beyond that, yeah, very. He nothing really exciting. Just very quiet and kept to himself.
All right. Any follow-up questions, Mr. Edson?
No, thank you.
Any follow-up questions, Ms. Spengler?
No.
May this witness be released from his subpoena.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
The people call Nick Carroll.
Morning. Morning. Could I have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Nicholas John Freeman Carroll. First name Nicholas. John John. Freeman Freeman. Carroll Carroll.
Ms. Pearson, you may proceed.
Mr. Carroll, where are you employed?
I work for the Aurora Police Department.
What do you do for them?
I am a crime scene investigator.
What does a crime scene investigator do?
Crime scene investigators respond to crime scenes, and we observe and document the condition of the scene when we arrive. We locate, identify, document, and preserve evidence.
How long have you worked at the Aurora Police Department?
I've been with Aurora for approximately 4 years now.
Prior to that, did you work for another police agency as a crime scene investigator?
Yes, for approximately 3 years, I was in Kansas City, Missouri with their police department working as a crime scene investigator.
Do you have to have specialized training to be a CSI?
Yes.
What kind of training do you have?
I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in forensic science, and then once I was on the job, they sent me to an extensive 2.5-month training program in Tennessee called the National Forensic Academy. And then I also participated in a year-long on-the-job field training officer program.
Were you working at the Aurora Police Department on July 20th of 2012?
Yes, I was.
On that day, what shift were you working?
I was a swing shift, so I was working 4 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Did you hear a call regarding a shooting at the Century 16 Theater?
Yes.
And do you recall what time you heard that shooting?
I believe it came out over the radio around 12:30.
Where were you at the time that you heard that?
It was kind of towards the end of my shift, so I was back at the lab finishing up some paperwork and getting ready to go off duty.
Did you respond to the theater?
Yes.
Why did you go there?
I heard over the radio that everything was going on and officers were calling for gas masks. And with the number of victims, there weren't enough ambulances and they weren't responding quick enough, so they started transporting victims to the hospital, which is not normally what the officers do.
Interject an objection to 403, 401 in due process.
Oh, sustained.
Did you gather gas masks?
Yes, I did.
Did you take a vehicle to the theater?
Yes,
Did you have a vehicle that was large enough to be used to transport people?
correct.
When you got to the theater, what did you observe going on outside the theater at that time?
Note an objection to 401, 403 in due process. This is cumulative to the other testimony of many of the first responders.
Ms. Pearson,
Your Honor, these are his observations as he responds for his job.
why don't counsel approach, please? right, the objection is overruled, but Ms. Pearson, you must proceed as I indicated, with the limitations I indicated at the bench.
Mr. Carroll, what did you observe when you first arrived outside the theater?
There was a lot of people, a lot of cars in the parking lot. A mutual aid dispatch had gone out to other law enforcement agencies in the area, so multiple agencies were in the parking lot.
When you first got to the theater, did you make contact with someone else from your agency?
Yes.
What were you asked to do first?
I was asked to respond to the local hospitals and begin photographing and documenting and collecting evidence.
Did you do that?
Yes.
What hospital did you go to?
The first hospital I responded to was University Hospital.
What time did you arrive there?
I believe I arrived at University Hospital at approximately 2 a.m.
What did you do at University Hospital?
I photographed victims and collected evidence from them.
Do you recall the victims that you saw at University Hospital, the names of the victims?
I do recall quite a few of them, but I saw 17 victims, so I may struggle on some of the names.
Where were these victims located in the hospital?
Right at the entrance.
Excuse me, objection to relevance 403, cumulative.
Overruled, as the question is about the location where he went to collect this evidence or to take photographs, so overruled.
Where were victims located in the hospital?
I contacted the first victim just inside the entrance to the emergency room. There were several victims in the ER operating rooms, the trauma center area. There was multiple victims in multiple hallways. There was also several in the waiting room. There were a couple in the CT scan area, and then there were several in operating rooms that I was unable to contact.
So you ultimately had contact with 17 victims at University Hospital.
Yes.
Do you recall the names of the people that you saw there?
Yes.
And could you tell us those?
Calls for hearsay, confrontation.
Names? No, overruled.
I saw Caleb Medley, Bonnie Portia, Pierce O'Farrell, Michael White, Prodeo Patria, Jansen Young, Allison Young, David Williams, Maria Carbonell, and that's all I can recall right now.
Quite a few. After you finished at University Hospital, where did you go next?
Next, I responded to Children's Hospital.
What time did you get to Children's Hospital?
I believe I arrived there around 3:40 a.m.
Were there victims that you also had contact with at Children's Hospital?
Yes.
Do you recall how many?
I believe there were 6.
Did you take photographs of them?
Yes.
Did you see Veronica Mosher Sullivan at Children's Hospital?
Objection calls for hearsay, confrontation, due process.
Objection, this is a statement of identification, it is not hearsay. You may answer the question.
Yes, I did.
At the time that you saw her at Children's Hospital, what was the name that they were using to identify her?
The
Sustained.
Had they determined what her name was at that time?
Yes, I was given a name, Veronica Mosher Sullivan.
Do you recall the victims that you saw at Children's Hospital, the names of them?
Yes.
And who are they?
There was Veronica.
An objection to hearsay and confrontation. Objection to hearsay and confrontation.
Again, it's not hearsay. Under Rule 801, this is a statement, an out-of-court statement, but it's for identification, so it's not hearsay. The objection is overruled.
Could you give us the names of the people that you saw at Children's Hospital?
Veronica Mosher Sullivan, Heather Lucas, Mr. Lucas. There was a Alejandro Cardonas Lamas, and the other names escape me at this time.
Could I have People's Exhibits 295 and 296?
These have been previously admitted?
No, Your Honor. These
Oh,
are,
you're asking for them, okay.
sorry, these are ones I'm asking to,
All right.
that I will approach the witness with. I'm going to hand you what has been marked as People's Exhibits 295 and 296. Do you recognize those items?
Yes.
And what are they?
Exhibit 296 is a specimen cup that contained a projectile, and I collected it from Alejandro Cardonas Lamas.
And 295?
295 is a projectile recovered from the clothing. It was attached to the shorts that she was wearing.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 295 and 296.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-295 and 296 are admitted.
And did you collect these items from Alejandro Cardona Lamas at Children's Hospital?
Yes, I did.
Did you leave the hospital at some point in the morning?
Yes.
Do you recall what time that was?
Around 5:45 a.m.,
Where did you go?
I responded to the crime scene.
Back to the theater?
Yes.
Could I have People's Exhibits 310 and 311, please? I'm going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 310 and 311. Do you recognize these items?
Yes.
And how did you come into possession of these?
When I arrived at the crime scene, a detective with the Aurora Police Department approached me and gave me some evidence.
Was that Detective Lance Dyer?
Yes.
And these items, are they from particular victims?
Yes.
Could you tell us what 310 is, please?
Exhibit 310 is bullet fragments removed from Gage Hankins at Swedish Hospital.
And 311?
Exhibit 311 is a specimen cup containing bullet fragments from Christina Blasch at Swedish Hospital.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibit 310 and 311.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-310 and 311 are admitted.
And although you received those at the theater, then did you ultimately put them into evidence at the Aurora Police Department?
Yes.
What time did you first enter the theater?
I first entered the theater around 11:15.
At the time that you first went into the theater, what was the purpose of your initial look at what was going on inside the theater?
Initially, we were going in to document the location of the deceased victims that were in the theater.
And we're talking about Theater 9, to be clear.
Correct.
Could you step down to the model, please, and explain for us the layout of the theater? At the time that you went into the theater, did you ultimately determine a way to number seats, to number rows, and to do all of that?
Yes, when we first entered the theater, we made observations of what was in there and what we were going to have to do to proceed further.
And Your Honor, if I may have the witness step down to the model, and there's a wireless microphone right there as well, which you'll need to turn on. able to determine how many seats there are in Theater 9?
Yes, we were told there were 415 seats in Theater 9.
And how did you number the rows and the seats?
We numbered as if you were facing the screen, left to right. So this seat would be number 1, moving that way to 20. And then we went from the screen, which was the east wall, and we went up the rows 1 to 20.
So is row 8 the first row behind in the stadium seating?
Correct.
Did you number the rows that were on either side of that center section?
We did not number the rows on either side of the aisles.
Thank you. Were you involved in removing the victims from the theater?
Yes.
Could I have People's Exhibit 288, please? In the process of moving the body of John Larimer, did you retrieve an item of evidence?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what is marked as People's Exhibit 288?
Yes.
Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is a projectile or a spent bullet that was removed from the left side of John's torso.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibit 288.
Any objection?
And where,
Hold on, without objection, P-TR-288 is admitted.
and where was his body located in the theater?
He was at the, excuse me, he was at the front of the first set of seats that begin the stadium-style stadium-style seating, which would have been row 8. He was on the north side, kind of by the entrance hallway.
So that would be the left side as we're facing the screen.
Correct.
Now, did getting the victims out of the theater take the remainder of the day on July 20th of 2012?
Yes.
At the end of that day and other days that you spent in the theater, was the theater sealed up?
Yes.
How did you do that?
At the end of every day, we would take evidence tape. We would close the doors of the theaters and place evidence tape over the closure edge of the door. So if anybody opened it, that seal would be broken. And then we also had officers around the theater securing the scene.
Was that for both Theater 8 and Theater 9?
Correct.
How many days did you ultimately spend in the theater collecting evidence?
We were in the theater for 9 days.
So let's go to day 2 on July 21st. Were you at the theater that day on Saturday?
Yes.
What was the purpose what were you trying to accomplish that day? What was the goal?
Saturday, we primarily tried to identify, locate all items of evidence and begin marking them.
What kinds of things did you mark that day?
We marked a shotgun, fired shotgun shells, fired cartridge casings. There were loaded gun magazines, bone fragments, shotgun wadding, a clear-out canister, several pocket knives.
How did you identify the items? How did you mark them?
There was an extensive amount of evidence, so we did not have enough. We generally use yellow numbered or lettered placards, but we did not have enough of them. So we took small white business cards and folded them in half and made those into tents or placards and wrote numbers on them.
On Saturday, the 21st, how many of the folded business cards with numbers did you place?
I believe we placed 123.
Did that take you most of the day?
Yes.
Did you seal the theater up at the end of that day?
Yes.
Did you return again on Sunday, July 22nd?
Yes.
Could I have People's Exhibit 286 and 287? As you began evidence collection that day, did you collect an item that was not listed with a placard that was a ball cap?
Yes. So another thing that we did on Saturday while we were identifying evidence, there was also a lot of extra items, clothing, pop cups, popcorn. So we tried to also remove those items. Any personal property was taken to the lobby and packaged.
And that was to get it out of the way before you were collecting items that you felt had evidentiary value?
Correct.
I'm going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 287 and 288, or 286, I'm sorry, 286 and 287. Do you recognize those items?
Yes.
And what is People's Exhibit 286?
Exhibit 286 is a Denver Nuggets ball cap. It was one of what was believed to be a personal item in the theater that was removed and packaged in the lobby.
And People's Exhibit 287?
Exhibit 287 is a shot pellet that was underneath the fabric in the bill of the ball cap.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 286 and 287.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to 286. May we approach?
Yes. All right, without objection, exhibits P-TR-286 and P-TR-287 are admitted.
Now, People's Exhibit 286, what do you observe about that exhibit?
The item had what appeared to be bullet damage in the front and the back, and it's also stained with...
Objection, Your Honor. Improper opinion.
Sustained.
And does it have a red stain on it?
Yes, it does.
Now, where was 287, the shot pellet, recovered from?
The fabric on the top of the bill of the cap.
On that day, on Sunday, the 22nd, did you check the roof for any signs of any kind of bullets having gone through the roof?
Yes.
How did you do that?
A detective and myself accessed the roof of the building through a roof hatch in the projection room of Theater 9. And we went up on the roof and established where Theater 9 was. And it was kind of a flat, tarred roof. We systematically searched the roof for any protrusions or holes or any kind of damage.
Did you find any damage?
We did find a couple protrusions, but we cut them out and observed they were just, they had no evidentiary value.
Was there any indication that any bullets had gone through the roof of the theater?
No, it did not appear that the damage continued any further than the top rubber or tar layer.
On that day, did you collect the items of evidence that had been marked with all of the placards on Saturday the 21st?
Yes.
Did you collect all 123 yourself?
No.
How did you split that up, and with who?
I collected items 1 through 60, and my colleague, CSI Maria Petalina, collected items 61 through 123.
Did you also have a detective available to assist you, to help you with the process of collecting?
Yes, as I collected the evidence and put it in an envelope, the detective was my scribe, so he wrote down any notes I had.
Now, were photographs taken that showed the placards in place, that give some idea of what that looked like in the theater?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 2764, 2765, 2947, and 2767. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
What do they depict?
This is the area between the screen and that first row of seats on the ground level.
Do they fairly and accurately reflect what you observed in the theater in July of 2012?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 2764, 2765, 2947, and 2767.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-2764, 2765, 2947, and 2767 are admitted.
And may we publish, Your Honor?
Yes, they may be published.
Could I have 2764, please? What are we looking at in this photograph?
If you are facing the screen, we are on the left side, facing the right.
And is the exit door towards the center of the screen, towards the top?
Yes, the alcove you see there is the exit door to the back of the theater.
Could I have 2765, please? What are we seeing in this photograph?
This is moving closer towards that exit door. The white things on the floor that you see, those are our numbered placards, and they are indicating items of evidence that are on the floor.
Could I have 2947, please? What do we observe in this photograph?
This is that same area, just a different viewpoint. I'm standing closer to the screen facing the theater now, but you again see the yellow placards marking evidence, or white placards, excuse me.
And 2767, please? What are we seeing in this photograph?
This is the first couple rows, but again looking towards that exit in the southwest corner, southeast.
Thank you. You can take that down. So when you began to collect the evidence from these placards in the theater, did you indicate where it was by the general area that certain items were found?
Yes.
Where was the first area that you picked up evidence from?
The first area was the alcove that contained the exit to the back of the building.
And if you could come down to the model and show us where that is.
The first area that I collected items of evidence would have been in here, this alcove area inside.
Could I have People's Exhibit 200? I'm going to hand you three items, photographs 2851 and 2852, and People's Exhibit 200. Do you recognize that item and those photographs?
Yes.
Is Exhibit 200 an item of evidence that you collected in the theater on July 22nd of 2012?
Yes.
And do those two photographs fairly and accurately reflect what you observed in the theater?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibit 200 plus People's Exhibit 2851 and 2852.
Any objection?
I only object to 2852, the photograph under 403, 401, and due process grounds.
Let's see those pictures, please.
Yes, sir.
Would counsel approach, please, briefly? The objection is overruled. Here you go. And so P-TR-2851, 2852, and 200 are all admitted. 2852 over objection.
Could
And
I
all-
have-
And 2851 and 2852 may be published.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2851 up, please? What are we looking at in this photograph?
This is the first item of evidence that we placard. It is in the alcove near the exit door, and it's a fired shotgun shell.
And what is Exhibit 200, the physical exhibit that I gave you?
It is the shotgun shell pictured in the photograph.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2852? And what are we looking at in this photograph?
This is the second item of evidence we placard in that same area on the floor, and it's a suspected bone fragment.
When you were searching the theater, did you find a number of what you suspected were bone fragments?
Yes.
Relevance 403.
Overrule, same ruling that I made with respect to P-TR-2852.
What is the next area that you collected evidence from?
On the floor just inside the theater near that alcove.
And if you could again approach the model and show us where that is.
So the next area that contained items of evidence was the floor just inside the alcove in the theater in that corner area.
And to be clear, item 1, was that in fact collected inside the vestibule?
Yes,
Okay. And now the items that we're going to were collected outside the vestibule on the floor.
correct.
Could I have people's exhibit, let's see, well, first I'm going to give you some photographs, I think. I'm going to hand you what have been marked as people's exhibits 2769, 2770, 2772, and 2849. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes,
How do you recognize them?
this is the area that I showed you on the model.
Do they fairly and accurately represent what you observed in the theater on July 22nd of 2012?
Yes,
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 2769, 2770, 2772, and 2849.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR 2769, 2770, 2772, and 2849 are admitted and may be published.
And if I could have 2769 up first, please. Can you tell us what we're looking at here?
we are facing the alcove that contains the exit door, and we are looking at the floor just inside the theater from that alcove, and there's items of evidence marked on the floor.
2770, please. Is that a slightly closer view of the same?
Yes.
2772? And what are we looking at here?
This is a shotgun that was on the floor, and you can also see a fired shotgun shell.
And 2849, please. And what are we looking at in this photograph?
This is another view of the items of evidence that are on the floor. You can see a shotgun, several fired shotgun shells, a pocket knife, and several loaded high-capacity magazines, gun magazines.
Thank you. And could I have People's Exhibit 277? Do you recognize item 277, or People's Exhibit 277?
Yes, this is the shotgun depicted in the photographs you just saw.
That you picked up?
Correct.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibit 277.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR 277 is admitted.
And where in the theater was this shotgun located?
Shotgun was collected from the floor just inside the vestibule.
Does this shotgun have a serial number on it?
Yes.
Is there one that you're able to read?
It is marked on the outside of the packaging, if I can read that serial number.
If you could, please.
It is RS77140F.
Thank you. And
Ms. Pearson, has that item been rendered safe?
it has. And if you could explain to the jury how that item has been rendered safe.
Yes, there is a protective lock run through the ejection port of the gun, so no items can go into the gun to be fired.
And there's no ammunition in the gun?
Correct. There's no ammunition with this firearm.
Thank you. Could I have People's Exhibits 201, 203, 204, and 205? Thank you. I'm going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 201, 203, 204, 205, as well as Exhibits 2853, 2857, and 2855 for the moment. So turning first to People's Exhibit 2853, which is a photograph. If you could take a look at that.
Yes.
Okay. As well as People's Exhibit 201. Do you recognize those items?
Yes.
What are they?
One is a photograph of a shotgun shell at placard 4, and the other item is the item of evidence, the shotgun shell in the photograph.
Is this an item of evidence you collected and a photograph that fairly and accurately represent it?
Yes.
Looking next at People's Exhibit 203 and People's Exhibit 2855. Do you recognize that photograph as well as that item?
Yes.
Is that an item that you collected in the theater at Placard 6?
Yes.
And People's Exhibit 2857. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
Does that also fairly and accurately represent what you observed in the theater on July 22nd of 2012?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 201, 203, 204, and People's Exhibit 2853, 2857, and 2855.
So you're not moving 205 at this time,
I will in the next group.
okay? Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-201, 203, 204, 2853, 2855, and 2857 are all admitted.
Turning first to People's Exhibit 2853, could we have that published, please? And what are we looking at in this photograph?
This is a fired shotgun shell at placard 4 on the floor in the area that I pointed out on the model.
Just inside just outside of the vestibule, inside the theater near the
Correct.
door.
Just inside the theater, near the alcove.
In People's Exhibit 201? Is that the shotgun shell that's reflected in this photograph?
Yes.
Turning next, could I have People's Exhibit 2857, please? The photograph. What do we see in this photograph?
This is that same area. You can see the shotgun, several fired shotgun shells, the pocket knife, and a loaded high-capacity gun magazine.
What placard numbers do we see in this photograph?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 6 is a little hard to read on my screen, but it's the bottom one.
And People's Exhibit 2855? Is that a better photograph of placard 6?
Yes.
People's Exhibit 203, what is the physical exhibit?
203 is the fired shotgun shell at placard 6.
And People's Exhibit 204?
Exhibit 204 is the fired shotgun shell at placard 7.
I'm now going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 2856 and 2859 photographs. And you already have People's Exhibit 205. Do these photographs fairly and accurately represent what you observed in the theater?
Yes.
And is Exhibit 205 an exhibit that you collected in the theater?
Correct.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admittance of People's Exhibit 205 as well as 2856 and 2859.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-205, 2856, and 2859 are admitted and may be published.
Could I have 2856, please? What are we seeing in this photograph?
This is placards 7 and 8, a fired shotgun shell, and a loaded high-capacity gun magazine.
Now, did you collect the magazines at the same time that you were going through and collecting the rest of the numerical items?
We did not. We waited to collect them after we were done collecting the other items of evidence so that we could count the items inside of the gun magazine.
And People's Exhibit 204, is that the shotgun shell that is reflected in People's Exhibit 2856?
Yes, 204, Exhibit 204 is the spent shotgun shell at placard 7.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2859, please? Is this placard 10?
Yes.
And item 205 is, what is that?
Exhibit 205 is the fired shotgun shell depicted in the photograph.
What area did you next collect items of evidence from in Theater 9?
We continued moving, as if you're looking at the screen, to the left, so further away from that alcove, still in front of the seats, so in between the screen and that first row of seats.
And could you again step down to the model and show us where we're talking about?
So this is the original area we talked about. The second area that we just concluded with is right here. We just continued on the floor inward here between the screen and the front row of seats.
Could I have People's Exhibits 206 to 215? And I'm going to hand you what have been marked as People's Exhibits 2948, 2860, and 2861. Do you recognize all of those exhibits?
Yes.
Are those items that you collected in the theater on July 22nd of 2012?
Yes.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately represent the items that you collected from placards in the theater on that same day?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 2948, 2860, 2861, and People's Exhibits 206, 207, 208, 209, 210, 211, 212, 213, 214, and 215.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-206 through 215 inclusive are admitted, and P-TR-2948, 2860, and 2861 are admitted, and all of those items may be published.
Could I first have People's Exhibit 2948? Now, what are we looking at in this photograph, and where are we in the theater?
We are, if you're facing the screen, we're continuing to the left, away from the alcove. And in the far left side of the photograph, you can see some of those items of evidence we've previously talked about in photographs. And to the right, or more centrally located in the picture, are more placards of evidence.
People's Exhibit 2860, please. And what placards do we have here?
We have placards 11, 12, 13, and 14, and this photograph is a closer image of the centrally located items of evidence in the previous photo.
And could I have, and looking at People's Exhibit 206, the physical exhibit of People's Exhibits 206, 207, 208, and 209, first of all. What are they?
These are fired cartridge cases,
And do you know what caliber?
223. And
What
they
kind of a firearm are those fired from?
They are fired from a rifle.
And the items that I just asked you about through 206 through 209, are those items that are reflected at placards 11, 12, 13, and 14?
Correct.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2861? Do we have an additional placard that we see in this photograph?
Yes, we can now see placard 15.
What is item 210 that you have in front of you?
Item 210 is another fired cartridge case, 223, from placard 15.
So when we refer to spent cases or fired casings, these are one that have been shot through a firearm.
Correct.
I'm going to hand you photographs marked 2862, 2783, 2863, and 2865. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately represent placards that you put in the theater in July of 2012?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of People's Exhibits 2862, 2783, 2863, and 2865.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-2862, 2783, 2863, and 2865 are admitted and may be published.
Could I have 2862, please? What part of the theater are we in at this point?
You can start to see the carpet of where those first rows of seats are located within the front of the theater, near the screen, moving as if you're facing the screen, moving left away from that alcove.
And People's Exhibit 211 is a physical exhibit?
Yes, Exhibit 211 is the item depicted in the photograph.
And what item is this? What is this?
It is another fired cartridge case, a 223.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2783, please? Are we looking at more placard numbers here, 17 and 18?
Yes,
Are these also fired 223 casings?
correct.
And People's Exhibits 212 and 213, the physical exhibits,
Yes,
are those the items that are reflected in this photograph?
yes.
Could I have People's Exhibit 2863, please? And if you could look at People's Exhibit 214. Is the item 214 another fired casing reflected in this photograph at placard 19?
Yes.
And 2865, please? What placard are we at here?
Placard 20.
And what is item 215?
Item 215 is the fired cartridge case depicted in the photograph at placard 20.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson, let's go ahead and take our morning break at this time, okay?
Okay.
All right, members of the jury, it's about 10:16. Let's go ahead and take our morning break. Please keep in mind that my advisements apply during the break, okay? Have a good break. I'll see you back in about 20 minutes. The record should reflect that the jury has left the courtroom now. All right, have a good break, folks. I'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Thank you. The court will be in recess.